they cannot make a proactive role in the other countries. And the third one is a legal restriction of ODA. Our ODA, maybe with the other countries as well, the official development assistance, this economic assistance, can be used only for the aid, the purely aid purpose, not for the military purpose. So it was a limitation under the current situation. But it is, again, it's not unique. It has been the issues of the Japanese foreign policy since after the World War II, since the World War II. And then the first very strong hypothesis everybody insists is the political will of the Prime Minister Abe. But my hypothesis today is a strong incentive of the bureaucrats. The political will is important, but more importantly, I'd like to focus on the incentive for the Japanese bureaucrats, particularly from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Ministry of Defense. And then I insist that there was some strong incentive from the bureaucrats after the political will of the Prime Minister Abe. Okay. So let me briefly explain the background of our government in the foreign aid. These are all state agencies, JICA, Japan's International Cooperation Agency, which is in charge of the economic aid and technical support, and the Ministry of Foreign Affairs here and Ministry of Defense. And for the Ministry of Defense, and some part of the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, who is working on the security arena, insists that aid is for the sake of Japan. It is to protect our national interests. But for the aid workers, the JICAs are state agencies, but the workers are really aid workers. They are really aid-needing people. And then they do not agree with this idea that aid is for the national Japan's interest. So the bureaucrats working in these three state agencies, they all aware of these issues, so the diversity of these foreign policy implementers. And then this has something to do with the Japan's recent focus on the defense cooperation in ASEAN. That's my hypothesis. Okay, the methodology, I use three methods. First is the data gathering and archive research and interview to the bureaucrats. First is data gathering. I got the data from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and Ministry of Defense, the fact and figures of the new assistance menu of the Japanese government to the ASEAN countries. There are three kinds. Okay, the first one is a new type of ODA. ODA has been a main source of our diplomacy, but this one is very new because it's for the maritime security and disaster management. We didn't have to change the law. Okay, we didn't have to change the ODA charter as well. Our government is now changing the ODA charter, but it happened even before they changed that. And this is a civilian to civilian aid, civilian government to civilian government. And to Indonesia in 2006, the Japanese government started to help the maritime police. And the Philippines as well in 2013. It's more on the maritime security and sometimes the humanitarian assistance and disaster relief. So this is quite new. And then this is the data from the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and how they expand their new type of ODA for the maritime security to this region. Particularly Indonesia, Vietnam, and the Philippines. And then the similarity or the common issues of these three countries are, of course, this sea. Right? And the second one is the defense equipment and technology cooperation. Again, we didn't have to change the law. So for more than 30 years, the basic policy has been not to transfer any defense equipment, weapons, and vessels, and the technology abroad. But on April 1, 2014, the Japanese cabinet adopted the three principles on transfer of defense equipment and technology. It's for the active promotion of peace, according to the word of Prime Minister Abe. So what kind of defense cooperation, defense technology can be transferred? Here, the transportation, rescue, and the vigilance. It can be used for the HADR, the humanitarian assistance and disaster relief, as well as the guarding the sea, the safeguard of the sea. So, so this one was based on the cabinet decision. We didn't change the law. We didn't have any legislation in the parliament. Again, it is a political will. And the third one is a capacity building by the Japanese self-defense forces. Again, we didn't have to change the law. It's a guideline. So this will be done by the Japanese self-defense forces, not by JICA or not by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. So it's a military to civilian, military to military or military to civilian aid. In field of the HADR or the maritime security, and then also the UNPKO field, we have some experiments, the 20 years experience of the UNPKO, so they expand that knowledge to the ASEAN countries. And the target is the armed forces or related organizations in the ASEAN countries. So this is from SDF to the armed forces of the Philippines or Indonesia, etc. And Ministry of Defense started this research to identify the needs of several Asia-Pacific countries in 2011. It is before the Prime Minister Abe was elected as Prime Minister. It is still under Democratic Party of Japan's period. And it launched first project in fiscal year 2012, before the Prime Minister Abe was elected. And then in 2013, 2014, it's already included in the budget, the national budget. And there are three kinds of capacity building assistance. The first one is to send the SDF for the long-term training to the ASEAN countries. To Mongolia, sorry, it's not ASEAN country, but it's an Asian country. To Mongolia, the self-defense forces is sent to their training center, to their military training center, and then they give some training. And also in Cambodia, in terms of UNPKO. And in Timor-Leste, it's a humanitarian assistance and disaster relief. So that's a long-term training. The second one is a short-term training. We did it in Vietnam, Indonesia, and Mongolia. And the third category is to invite the military people from Asian countries to Japan, inviting Vietnam, Indonesia, Mongolia again, and we have in the camp of the self-defense forces, they provide extensive trainings on the UNPKO or disaster relief. So it is purely military to military cooperation. The human capacity, human resource training by the military. That is very new after 2012. So from the data, no new registration was needed until this time. And then 3 new assistance menus started to be implemented between 2012 and 2014. So the preparation of this implementation must be done even before Abe was elected as Prime Minister for the second time in December 12, 2012. So the preparation was done during the DPJ, the Democratic Party of Japan period. And then the second, I did the archive research. I collected some current laws and the policies and guidelines. And there are the chart. There are many, 10. I collected 10. But the main point is that Ministry of Foreign Affairs, MOD, the Ministry of Defense Cooperation, or the Self-Defense Forces plus ODA cooperation were already written in the first report of the advisory group of the security in 2002. It was long before. It was 10 or 12 years ago. And the Prime Minister Abe was even not elected for the first time. And the capacity building was already included in the advisory group's report in 2010. But it was formally included in the Japanese policy in 2010. In the National Defense Program Guidelines, or Boe Taigo in 2010, it was drafted under the Democratic Party of Japan. So it's nothing to do with the Prime Minister Abe. And then other administration just started after 2012, December 2012. And then under Abe administration, as you know, we have a new defense program, the defense program guideline, and we also have the NSS, the National Security Strategy, and the famous cabinet decision on the development of the seamless security registration to ensure Japan's survival and protect the people. The latest one, number 10, is a recent development to change the interpretation of the Constitution Article 9. So it was done by the Abe administration, but the policy was already included in 2010. And it was just accelerated by the Prime Minister Abe, particularly in 2014, this year, in Shangri-La Dialogue, as I already mentioned. And there was another one in February this year. We had a discussion with an ASEAN member, Japan-ASEAN Defense Vice Ministerial Forum. And then Japan already declared that even before the Shangri-La Dialogue, to support ASEAN in terms of defense. Okay, so from this archive research of the policy papers, the combination of ODA and SDF assistance were already proposed in 2002, a long time ago. And strategies have been created without changing any laws. And commitment and implementation was accelerated in 2014, not because of the registration, but some other reasons. So I wondered what really happened between 2012 and 2014, even under the Democratic Party of Japan. By the way, I used to work in the Democratic Party of Japan when they were in power just for 3 years. And after that, our party was lost, and I transferred to the bureaucrats. Okay, the third one is an interview to the bureaucrats. I conducted some interviews to the Ministry of Defense, Ministry of Foreign Affairs, JICA, and the soldiers, our soldiers. Again, this was the diversity of our state agencies. So the JICA strongly believe that the aid, foreign assistance, is their work, and don't take it. So the Ministry of Defense is nothing to do with the aid. But, so what happened before 2012? I interviewed the Ministry of Defense. They said that we have wished to expand the SDF's role abroad, particularly in ASEAN countries, for security reasons. However, we could do little during the Democrat Party's administration, and then we had to do it without changing laws. So the capacity building was a very disparate measure we could propose without any change of the law, because under the Democrat Party, we cannot hope to change any legislation of the security
environment. Japan's overall security has already been altered with the creation of a US-like National Security Council and the passing of a defense package that includes the NSS. However, while there's little doubt that Japan will eventually become a proactive regional security provider, the change will be gradual and Japan will not completely abandon its UN security policy. There are two reasons for this argument. On the government level, UN security remains to be a useful tool for foreign policy that allows Japan to play a leading role in addressing non-traditional security threats. On the public level, the norm of anti-militarism is so deeply embedded that majority of the population are still staunchly pacifists. This is the first part. So at the government level, UN security is a foreign policy tool. So according to Akito Fukushima, UN security has always been about foreign and not domestic policy. Likewise, Paul Bacon notes that UN security has been used as a foreign policy tool and as means to achieve Japan's development assistance objective. In fact, some of the criticisms of Japan's human security policy is that it has become a tool of differentiation. So it represents what Japan is doing externally, but the government has neglected how the concept can be applied domestically. So for instance, the government's inadequate response following the 2011 triple disaster exposed the limitations of Japan's human security policy, that despite its active promotion abroad, it failed in the domestic context. By placing much emphasis on development assistance, the government is unable to operationalize human security inside Japan. And this should include not just post-disaster reconstruction, but other issues such as providing financial assistance to its own citizens, or granting asylum, and as Dr. San Jose discussed yesterday, also the rights of migrant workers. Okay? However, despite its shortcomings, human security remains an effective diplomatic tool. Human security provides an effective rationale for Japan's policy preferences. It serves as a justification for a number of policies such as a provision for development and humanitarian objectives, such as as well as continued participation in UNPKO missions. The NSS includes the enhancement of human security as part of Japan's national security agenda. Likewise, Japan continues to support the UNTFHS and the CHS, and JICA is still actively promoting human security through technical assistance and ODA in developing countries. On the public level, domestic level, so domestic debates on constitutional revision, collective self-defense, and the NSF are still ongoing. Despite assurances from the government and public intellectuals that Japan is not remilitarizing, that the new security policy is only meant to enhance the defense policy, or that there is an urgent need to update Japan's basic policy given the diverse and transnational nature of security threats, majority of Japanese citizens still remain unconvinced. So 55% of the public oppose Abe's collective self-defense, and 84% state that explanation of the government's decision to adopt collective self-defense is unclear. Prime Minister Abe's reinterpretation of Article 9 is primarily opposed because it disregards post-war norms and values, chief of which is pacifism, on which the national identity is founded upon. Many Japanese support Article 9. In fact, it's, according to some Japanese scholars, it is still the most popular provision in the Constitution, and many would want to keep the status quo. Abe gutting Article 9 without following legitimate procedures endangers the rule of law and makes a mockery of the constitutional constraints on government power. It also sets a dangerous precedent, as future administrations may try to render clauses in the Constitution meaningless by reinterpreting them just to fit their agenda. And in addition, abandoning the traditional defense-only defense position marks a clear departure from post-war Japan's basic security posture. So in sum, anti-militarism is deeply embedded and will continue to define Japanese collective identity. It is therefore unlikely that the government will further alter its security posture soon, given the public's resistance to constitutional revision, not just reinterpretation, revision. And so in light of new threat perceptions and the government's corresponding response, the relevance of human security may have diminished in the overall foreign policy discourse, but it will remain in place because it is bounded strongly by the dominant domestic norm of anti-militarism. So I'm going to conclude now. So what are Japan's human security? So human security is historically and legally constituted, bounded strongly by the Japanese bureaucracy and the norm of anti-militarism articulated in the Constitution. Developments in Japan's security posture should be considered as a pragmatic reorientation in response to the changing international environment. It should be understood as part of Japan's evolving approach to comprehensive security and not as a retreat from human security. So in other words, Japan's new security policy is a logical response to an increasingly dangerous environment. And although the changes have been significant, they do not represent a fundamental shift. Human security will continue to be an important component of Japanese foreign policy, whether as an end in itself or a means to a different end. Thank you.
In researching these risks of, for example, nuclear or mining, because for one thing, mining has been around much longer than nuclear power plants. So, in a way, we knew the risks for a long time, but the thing is, a lot of research on nuclear risks are proliferating and they're getting much more attention as well by academics as research in terms of research. So what do you think, what is the status quo in terms of those, in the competition between mining risks and nuclear risks in terms of as a research problem? Thank you.
I think basically I just extended the awareness for radioactive exposure, that it's not only limited to nuclear power only. So if people would really want to do more research, maybe they should look into other industries also, not just the nuclear power. That's my take on your question. And for the other comments about the disaster management, yeah, thank you very much for your comments. I think it's quite obvious my lack of experience in the disaster management field, and I would really like to exchange contacts with you so that I can improve my research later on, and if I would want to go into more specific research, especially in the environmental sciences.
I think it has one.
The
The
other
first question, anti-nuclear and anti-mining.
The movements.
I don't think they should really be competitive.
It's not about competition. It's about seeing what's effective in both or what's not effective. You know.
Well, it's true. Mining already existed even in the past, but then the risks which are radioactive in nature is not yet being. It's not well publicized. Okay, and then the reason why people are giving too much attention in the nuclear is because, in terms of producing the energy, is because I think the lack of understanding of the technology itself.
I'm talking more about the people's movements.
People's movements.
Yeah, reaction to by the local communities
Okay.
or green parties, whatever. Do you think you mentioned that a bit in the last part? So, what's your take on that in terms of Japan and the Philippines?
Sorry, what do you mean? The green movement?
Yeah.
With the,
Which do you think is more effective? What makes Japan more effective in communicating to that disaster in the Philippines? Because, as you said, 18 years ago,
yes.
and still nothing. And yet people are still talking about it and trying to voice it out, but nothing's happening. So do you think it's because of the weakness or the effectiveness in comparison, of these movements, or is it really, as you said, the media?
I think because of the earthquake and the tsunami, plus the controversial nature of nuclear power, it's quite natural that the Fukushima case would already get more attention. However, for the Martopper, they can only get as much attention as when they actively engage in protests. Okay, but aside from the Martopper case, there are a lot of other mining disasters in the Philippines as well. So, they also have to compete against the typhoon disaster. So, okay, the attention towards the mining or copper mining is really compromised in that. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Okay, we asked you a lot, I'm sorry, and and that's perhaps a lot of the questions is actually a little bit out of your comfort zone. So to conclude the session, I think from all of the comments, I would actually, this is going to be to your own background and expertise. So I think you can do it by looking at both cases in terms of what's already happened and the consequence afterward, focusing on companies, structures. In disaster management, you have two approaches, structural approach and non-structural approach. I think you might want to focus a lot on structural approach, how the safety mechanism measures within both cases, how they analyze crisis and risk, no matter it happens from where, and then compare it as such. And whether or not intergovernmental relation plays into place, connecting with agency to come help, I think that would actually construct your paper really perfectly. That would be really nice. So if no one wants to, we still have a lot of time unless you want to go around and hop into other rooms for other presentation, it would be fine too. So do you have anything else to conclude or go ahead?
I just want to thank everyone for their comments, and yeah, I actually dedicated this paper to Dr. Lydia Yu Jose. Yeah, as a biologist, it's not really easy to discuss about political matters, and when I joined her class, she's basically the only person who encouraged me to try a different field. So And without her help, I won't be able to meet you guys and get your input also. So I really appreciate all your comments. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Can I have a round of applause for her? Okay, and thank you very much for participating in this session. And we still have about 30 minutes to end the first morning session, so you might want to go to
or greenhouse gas recovery from either burning waste or just letting it rot in landfills, which is really harmful to the environment. And what these projects do is they say, oh, well, we try and recover some of the gases that, happen or that are released when burning this waste. However, even if it's a really well done facility, you can never capture all these gases. So in the end, recycling would be much more climate friendly, but also, take more effort. That brings us to the third mechanism, the fast start finance. There, you can actually see a much stronger focus on Kaihatsu than on Hatten. And in terms of Kaihatsu, there was again a strong focus on hydropower and thermal power plants. And it's a very small picture, but at least the Hatten-related funding they did give did go into renewable energy, so some renewable energy was also funded under this credit offsetting mechanism. Last but not least, the joint credit mechanism. This actually, is the exact opposite of the fast start finance. And you can see that there's a much stronger focus on Hatten than on Kaihatsu. And in terms of Hatten, there's forestry as a new big area that's being funded. And sustainable forest management is actually a pretty efficient and cheap way of protecting the climate, because it doesn't take as much money to build capacity for sustainable forest management as it does, for example, to build renewable energies or like big power plants. Also part of Hatten was a lot of money going into renewable energies, but then of course on the other hand you also had some money going into Kaihatsu, which again was used for funding these sort of greenhouse gas recovery plants from burning waste or letting it rot in landfills. That's just a general overview. As you can see, there has been a continuous focus basically on hydropower plants and on thermal power plants. But on the other hand, you can see that renewable energy is starting to play a bigger role. And forestry has always been there, but it only played a tiny part and really took off with the joint credit mechanism. So, what does all that tell us? Which brings me to my last slide, the implication of my finding. The main finding is that there really seems to be an imminent change towards a focus on Hatten-related projects, and projects that aim to actually prevent CO2 emissions from the start. So, before I go into the implications, I think it would be really interesting to do further research on this and to actually ask, where does this impetus for change come from? Does it come from Japan and their, I'd like to agree with my previous speaker, they're interesting to look at the Japanese ministries and see, for example, the Japanese Ministry for Fisheries, Forestry and Agriculture is now more involved in this kind of aid giving, and we see an increase in forestry. Is it just correlation? Is it causation? I haven't looked into this yet because, this is not my real PhD research, it's just something I came across that I found really interesting. But the other question is, does this impetus for change maybe also come from the ASEAN recipient countries? Because if you look at the countries receiving funding under the joint credit mechanism, these have all agreed on national action plans to combat climate change over the last 5 years. So is there a stronger demand from the ASEAN countries? Has Japan changed its mind? I don't have an answer to this, but I think this would be a very interesting field for further research. Now to the implications. I think this is actually a very important finding in light of the recent climate negotiations. Because if you think that now there was this 10-day long conference in Lima trying to agree on a framework for a follow-up protocol to the Kyoto Protocol, which will hopefully be agreed upon next year during climate negotiations in Paris. And Japan has always been a very active participant in these negotiations and has been a substantial donor of funding for climate-related projects. Therefore, Japanese assistance can actually determine the character and the effectiveness of these international climate funds to a certain degree. So if the Japanese strategy really were to change towards Hatten in the long run, this would really affect the effectiveness and make them much better in working towards preventing climate change. Also, there's the question of, does this change in climate-related assistance indicate a change in the climate position in Japan overall? That's actually my PhD research. I don't have any answers to that yet, hopefully in 2 years. And then third of all, it could mean that actually climate-related aid by Japan will be much more efficient in the future in preventing climate change. And this actually is my takeaway message, that if this change really becomes institutionalized and continues, it's not only good for the climate, this would also be really good for the ASEAN countries, because they are among the most highly vulnerable to climate change around the world. And the more they can do to prevent climate change, the more they can do to prevent their own future, and to protect their own future. And maybe a personal message. I mean, Germans are kind of known for being weird tree lovers, protecting forests, and I have to say, yes, I like forests very much too, and I think it's a positive sign that Japan is turning more towards a cheap and effective way, preventing climate change, and also in a way going back to the origins of sustainability. Thank you for your attention. ご清聴ありがとうございました。
Thank you very much, Dr. She presents something about the climate policy cooperation between Thailand and ASEAN. So far, it's linked perfectly with the concept of sustainable development, which have two main streams that she presents. The first one is the Kaikasu, and the second one is Hatha. And she presents very well how Japan developed that its own strategies from Kaikasu to Hatha, from resource bed to wild beds, from the concept that link or perceive only reduce or eliminate the environment problem through advanced industrializations to the way that we can solve this particular problem to societies and environment, try to intervene between these two. And it shows so far that Japan moved towards the Hatha way. Thank you very much for providing us. Thank you very much. And then the last one, the last presenter, the last speakers of this panel, may welcome Mr. Siyapat Waringin. He's from Thammasat University, and he's going to present the topic of enhancing proactive pacifism. Thank you very much.
A proactive contribution to peace based on the principles of international cooperation. So, after the coming to the power, Prime Minister Shinzo Abe has prepared policies of proactive pacifism with the aims of the overhauling Japan's military policies and to pushing for Japan's greater presence on international security matters. And as a part of this policy, Abe has recently introduced three key military reforms. The first is in April 2014, Abe abolished Japan's sales-import ban on exporting military weapons. Then Japan could sell missile components to the United States in July 2014. Second, in July 2014, Abe reinterpreted the Article 9 peace clause of the Japanese constitution via cabinet decision. The new interpretations allow Japan's self-defense forces to exercise the right to collective self-defense under the limited conditions. And third, Abe has set his sights on nullifying specific principle of Japanese ODA, which would allow Japan to use ODA to support foreign armed forces. What's more, the national security strategy specific more strategic utilizations of ODA in line with Abe policies of making more proactive contributions to global stability. And this is the objective of my studies. The first one is to examine Japan driving forces as a proactive pacifist with regard to the provisions of ODA. And the second is to study Japan foreign aid policy towards Southeast Asian countries under proactive pacifist approach. So let's see the factors of the changes of the policy and ODA of Japanese government. The first one is U.S. factors. As everyone knows, Asia is the area that the most dynamic economic area in the world. And Asia also has an important emerging power like China, India, the biggest democracy countries, and Indonesia, the biggest Muslim country. Asia has the ongoing territorial disputes in the south and east. China sees between China and several U.S. allies in the regions. The presence of the U.S. in Pacific was necessary as a counterbalance to China. U.S. announced a plan to shift 60% of its fleet to the Asia-Pacific region by 2020. But however, U.S. cannot afford to overlook the Middle East. That is because on economy, the United States became more reliant on the Middle East for its oil imports last year. According to data from the U.S. Energy Department, when there is instability and insecurity in the oil-rich regions, it would likely drive up oil prices and raise costs of business of the world's largest economy. On security, the United States has been a victim of terrorist and Islamist extremist results largely from the conflict and turbulence of the Middle East. For this reason, this is important for Japan to put more effort in its own foreign policy for more support at the international level. This led the proactive pacifism to Japan foreign policy. So, and another factor is China. During the first 6 months of 2014, 40 Chinese vessels entered waters around Senkaku and Diaoyu. And last year, Chinese Coast Guard vessels were detaining Japan fishing boats and threatening to prosecute their crews, while also performing coast-blocking maneuver against Japan patrol ship. And by China, this is one reason. On November 23rd, 2013, China established an air defense identification zone over significant portions of the East China Sea. The ADIZ includes the airspace over dispute areas, including Senkaku or Diaoyu Islands contested by China and Japan. East China Sea is vis-a-vis Japan, and to a lesser extent, South Korea, both Japan and South Korea have decades-old ADIZ and will entry of their respective zones as triggering mechanism for military response since the central Japanese government purchased of 3 of the Senkaku from private Japanese owners in September 2012. China has increased military and law enforcement operations in and above the disputes in China Sea water in an effort to bolster its claim to the island. So, about ASEAN factors, ASEAN maritime security. The country with unresolved territorial disputes and conflicting interests with China, such as Vietnam and Philippines, has begun listing forward posture against rules and perceived Chinese trade. And the South China Sea and East China Sea start becoming the prime attentions of the ASEAN country. This is the Japan opportunities to support the regional code of conduct to maintain rules-based orders in the South China Seas and to support the several ASEAN member states to enhance their law enforcement capability by hardware and software supply imports necessarily. So, and this is another ASEAN factor. During the summit of ASEAN nations in 2013, Japan placed almost $20 billion in aid, agreed with ASEAN nations to guarantee freedoms of movement in the sky and over the region, and offer 2 trillion yen in the aid and loans, aiming at closing the region development gap and improving its disaster preparedness. It's become a freedoms of navigations over the region can be seen as a clear rejection of the ADIs established by China. Now we're gonna see the Japan ODA to Southeast Asian country. Japan provided ODA to Southeast Asian country for 59 years, and many Southeast Asian countries sent their staff and their people to train in Japan, around 170,000 people, or Japan also provided 35% ODA to ASEAN countries. We can see from these figures that Asia is the biggest one that Japan provides ODA for from here. And because of its close historical, geographical, political, and economic link, a large share of Japan ODA has been directed towards Asian countries for more than 4 decades, allocating in the field of economic infrastructure to improve the environment for investment by foreign capitals and promoting Japan ASEAN's exports industry. We can see Japan provided grant for the Southeast Asian countries, and this is the loan aid. The grant is used for the basic infrastructures, and this is the money that Japan provides for Southeast Asian countries. So, Japan international cooperation policies. The first is support for the development of the both soft and hard infrastructure, and to narrowing development gap, disaster risk reductions, cooperations, and the fourth support for ensuring the maritime safety and promoting the rule of law. Japan has continued to assist enhancements of ASEAN connectivity in narrowing the development gap within ASEAN, in particular support for the macro country, which include more low-income countries than the other areas of ASEAN, is important for reducing intra-regional disparities as well. So now the change of soft powers Japanese ODA to Southeast Asian country. So Japan, they use this symbol for their soft power, but the tool that they use is cultural product, manga, anime, food, official development such as money and technical cooperation, education. This is 3 kinds of soft power. And in the charter 1992 and 2003, the second regulations, any use of ODA for military purpose for aggravations of international conflict should be avoided. But now, Japan ODA to Vietnam provides 6 use boats and maritime security equipment, establish trainings and education center to enhance Vietnamese capacity to police its maritime zone, and help joint search and rescue trainings exercise between Japan's Coast Guard and the Vietnam Marine Police in 2012. And Japan's ODA to the Philippines. In July this year, Prime Minister Shinzo Abe made an official to visit the Philippines, and Abe announced 4 initiatives in diplomacy with the Philippines. The first one is nurturing of the vibrant economy together. The second, the promotions of cooperations in maritime affairs, and then 10 multi-purpose ships the Philippine Coast Guard is become this. So, if it concerns on the future Japanese ODAs, one, the use of ODA assistance for military purposes is permitted. Japan will be able to construct and upgrade seaport and airport that can be used for military purposes in the Philippines and Vietnam, both of which have territorial disputes with China. And with the relaxing of the ban on weapons exports approved by the Abe cabinet in April, Coast Guard cutter and other equipment could be sent to the Philippines and Vietnam, which also has a territorial dispute with China in the South China Sea. And although Japanese Foreign Minister Fumio Kishida said that development aid is Japan's biggest diplomatic tool, it is likely that the change in Japan foreign aid policy will be viewed by some of us an unwelcome and provocative decision. During his visit to Australia and New Zealand earlier in July, Abe stressed the importance of the strengthening defense ties. Japan and Australia are preparing policy to provide national security assistance in the Southeast Asian regions, and the ODA fund would play a major role in those efforts as well. One of such moves is intended to bolster Abe's proactive pacifism, which one high-ranking foreign ministry official described as use of military power in diplomacy. For my conclusions, in the past, Japan provided ODA for the Mekong sub-region for the infrastructure for CLMV country, but now Japan provide much more for the security, such as in Vietnam case and the Philippines case, and for Indonesia is as well. And in the past, chiefs of the strategic use of ODA. In the past, human security-oriented ODA is to resolve the problem of poverty, infrastructures, humanitarian assistance, environmental protection, and at the present, it's for providing coastal patrol vessels, training for maritime safety to regional partners. ODA of engagement of military in the past, humanitarian assistance, disaster relief, and the removal of island mine. But for now, this is the question for the future. And the future of Japanese ODA. More proactive pacifism and less soft power. This is for my voice, and Japan has a chance to truly become a proactive contributor to peace based on international cooperation. Okay, this is all of my presentation. Thank you.
International relations, the policies of proactive contributions of peace of Japan, and she looked through the mechanisms of the Japanese bureaucrats as well. Foreign NASA mentions about climate policy coordinations between Japan and ASEAN. Why Japan and how has Japan moved from the concept of sustainable development from Kaihatsu to Hata, from resource-based to value-based, from the one that concerns a lot by using advanced industrializations to the concept that we need to reduce the problems of environment problems, reduce the environment problem through the societies to intervene into that approach. And the last presenter, Jsa, mentions quite similar to present the same policy, the similar policy that Dr. Saya mentions of ODA of Japanese during Prime Minister Abe. But he presents different angles by focusing on the driving force and how the policy, foreign policy is during Prime Minister Abe's life. So please, questions from the floor, please. Yes, please. Please introduce yourself, your affiliations, and then the questions.
Yes, Sven Matheson from Sophia University in Tokyo. Actually, I might not have a question, it's more like a comment, and maybe it turns out to be a question, I don't know yet. It's basically about the ODA and the use of ODA by Japan. So I think that if you look at the tradition, how ODA had been used throughout the post-war era, during the Cold War, and even afterwards, there is a certain continuity, I think, because especially talking about Abe Shinzo, he once said, it's not long ago, that his main political role model has been his grandfather, Kishi Nobusuke. And Kishi had quite close ties to the first post-war Philippine Prime Minister Garcia. So actually, at that time already, Kishi saw the Southeast Asian realm as a future market for Japanese export. And so ODA, in my opinion, always has been also a tool for Japanese economic expansion. This is one of the reasons why it's seen sometimes very critical in certain Southeast Asian states. So, for example, normally, just a simple example, there had been in the Philippines, there was an MRT, it's like a magnet train, you know, like, I don't know the exact term for that, but like a train. So the only companies that can maintain or do the maintenance for this train are Japanese companies. So this is actually, it is ODA on one hand, but it is also a way for Japan to establish or to strike economic roots in that country. So this is definitely one of the motives for Japanese ODA. It's not pure philanthropic approach, so to speak. It's also a way of doing, a means of doing economy, in my opinion. And yeah, just maybe a final remark. Since I wonder, it might be a little bit cynical, no, not cynical, maybe sarcastic, because I doubt if Abe Shinzo really has the intellectual capacity to come up with a ODA or foreign policy of his own. It doesn't really surprise me that he's more or less copying his grandfather in that respect. That's probably all.
Thank you very much. I think that Dr. Saya and Jsa Dv can handle this question, please. I was comment on what do you
I mean, it's related to the first question. So especially my questions, Dr. Kyo. So before answering the question to first, ask one question. It's simple. It's not so deep like Steve's event. The first question. My question is, first of all, I appreciate you for your findings regarding how bureaucrats contribute to the formation of the current Prime Minister's policy toward ODA, using ODA as a part of proactive possibility. So my question is, how do you assess the Prime Minister's role in that process? Because for bureaucrats, it's quite difficult for participating in some international conference like the Chamber Dialogue and give a keynote speech. So even though the substance is decided by bureaucrats, I think there's some role Prime Minister Abe could play in that process. I'd like to ask your assessment of the Prime Minister.
Thank you very much. Okay, for the first comment, I just react very quickly. I'm sure all the prime ministers and the foreign ministers, not only the LDP but also the other parties, they somehow believe that the ODA is for the market, for the making market or for the national interest. But at the same time, there are very not conservative. It's a very fundamental aid workers, even inside the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. They do not believe that the aid is for the sake of the national interest. That's true. And then in the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, they are also diverse. And then for the security leading people or the economic aid really leading people and the business interest leading people, they are all in the same ministry. So that's why sometimes if you interview different bureaucrats or the different politicians, somehow the idea is not the same. But I'm sure that all as a ministry or as a government or even the prime minister, if the politician becomes a prime minister or the cabinet members, they share the same idea that the ODA is for the national interest. Okay, for the second question, thank you very much for the question. The role of the politician, particularly the Prime Minister Abe, is of course without legislation, he changed the law through the cabinet decisions. The transfer of the defense equipment was a cabinet decision. Even the change in the interpretation of the constitution is also the cabinet decision. So it's a really political power without including any parliamentary legislation. Yeah. The capacity building is different. It's more the policy and it's more the guideline between the ministries.
Any further questions? Yes, please. Please introduce yourself.
Hi, I'm Muhammad Moinuddin. I came from Osaka University. My question is, and this comment is about the whaling issues. Since this is a very burning issue in Japan itself, particularly after April when there was an article on the whaling issue regarding halal certification given by the Nishin Maru. I think you might have heard the word. Nishin Maru is the largest hunting ship in Japan that's doing its job in promotion. Regarding the presentation, I would say I think it's a very good attempt to combine the politics and culture. I think we always look at both of the aspects in two different perspectives. So I slightly disagree with you that in Japan, firstly about the pricing. In my university, the price of a whale meat is 300 yen only per plate. And in your presentation, it's more than 1,000. So I think the pricing is not a matter of the whale meat. It's at the same time the support which is gained by within Japan. I think the support base is increasing. I read some of the comments in Japanese language published by some Japanese people, like some news items or blogs. And it was basically on how the Nishin Maru gains the halal certification from some of the NGOs, which is run by a non-Muslim Japanese and his friend, a Muslim friend. Okay, although this one was condemned badly by many Muslim organizations in Japan itself. But when we see in the website, the many Japanese people are supporting that view. And the Japanese government is trying, through NGOs, they have organized several programs in Tokyo, in Osaka and many places. And surprisingly, it was not in public places, some of the private places that include ministers, NGOs and businessmen. So at the same time, they are trying to promote this whaling business as something very much particular of Japan, and at the same time to attract many tourists. So in conclusion, I would say that the attempts are being made to internationalize it, to gain more and more non-Japanese consumers by bringing a few issues that I think which is not only condemned by the Japanese people, but also Japanese Muslim organizations, but also by many international Muslim organizations. So I don't know whether it can be presented as something a Japanese pride, like we see as something sushi or sashimi. Maybe in future we may have some whale meat. I don't know what will happen, but I'd like to hear your comments about such kind of ground, I can say, a kind of support base which is being created within Japan and outside Japan. Thank you very much.
I'm not sure whether I understand your question correctly. So are you questioning that if in future, if Japan will have supporting?
No, my question is that in Japan itself, it is not only the political issue. At the same time, the Japanese people in large, in general, they are supporting this whale. And now they are not only taking help from some of the Japanese, but also at the same time they are trying to gain help from international organizations on the name of religion.
I'm not sure whether I'm following you because I don't think that any of them is using the term religion to discuss whaling issues. It is more about...
I'll give you some articles. I have checked it now. I'm giving you some terms. Just go for the website. It's published in 11 July 2014. Halal whale meat on menu as Japan tries to boost Muslim tourism. Halal whale meat Sea Shepherd Conservation Society. Halal whale meat Muslim tourism takes off in Japan. Halal haram food and drinks Islamic laws. So you have several articles in the website. It's published in April. In English. Not only in Japanese, in English. I'm reading the Google search.
Probably this is not to the, obviously, the audience in
Another
Japan.
thing, Nishin Maru whaling ship that I mentioned. Nishin Maru whaling ship, it is awarded halal certificate to prove. And surprisingly, they are organizing such gatherings in a few mosques. And at the same time, they have called a few journalists there, although there are many people there inside, they don't understand Japanese. And the interpreter is misinterpreting.
Right.
But later on,
I'm sorry to hear that, and thank you very much for your input. But this is probably beyond the scope of my presentation. I mainly talked about Japanese whaling issues to explain the structure and culture, the perception of point of view. So I appreciate your input. I'm not aware of this issue, so thank you very much.
Okay, thank you very much.
My question is addressed to Professor Nakano. Although your presentation is very interesting, but unfortunately you didn't elaborate what is behind the international criticism to Japan's whale hunting. I don't know what is the problem here. Why international criticism in Japan? That's the first question. Besides you don't provide us data about Japan's whale hunting, the numbers. Every year they hunt the whale. And the second is about culture. In my country, in the eastern of Indonesia, in the Flores, the people here there have a culture to hunt the whale, but there is no international criticism for the whale hunting there. So what is your comment to this question?
Thank you very much for your question. First of all, international criticism of Japan. You can hear a lot in Australia and New Zealand particularly because many populations in Australia and also especially strong international NGOs called Sea Shepherds argue that whales are different from fish. They are intelligent. They are also cute mammals. And many Australians as well as tourists to Australia actually do whale watching. And they understand the biology of whales and they understand how clever they are. So that's why it is an emotional subject for some people in Western countries. And that is what I call international criticism of Japanese whaling. And Japan, I think originally Japan, took about 1,000 whales a year, but because of the block.
Santi in Thailand is peace, like Cambodia, Vietnam is peace. So we are seeking for peace, and also we are using the same SVA. So we're starting from 1980, working in the refugee camp. We focus on the library and printing because we defined that the problem of the refugees are losing of the identity of their own culture. So we started working library, but no book. So we decided to set up the printing shop in refugee camp. About 10 years, we print more than 1 million Cambodian book because Cambodia was no book. So we decided to reprint and publish Cambodian language. So SVA's mission is simply say live together and learning together in peace and respecting human dignity and diversity. From beginning, we always respect human dignity and diversity. And from beginning, starting a volunteer as a catalyst, we call volunteer catalyst theory. From beginning, we're using a volunteer as a catalyst. So our vision, I don't want to talk much. Value to respect each region's traditional culture, people, region, and language service. So always we respect traditional culture, region, language. Also act as a catalyst for development and interaction. So where are we working here? Thailand, Cambodia, Laos, Myanmar refugee camp, Myanmar, Pakistan, Japan. Now in Tohoku, let us. So 7 countries, 7 finance, we have found individual donation about 65 to 70%. Membership and craft aid and fire trading. ODA from Ministry of Foreign Affairs, NGO project subsidy, grant assistance for Japanese NGO project, also giant partnership program, GPF. GPF is not ODA but very similar to Japanese ODA. So without ODA, most of Japanese NGO is very difficult to support the project now. This is another contradiction of the program issue challenge. And also we are focusing on emergency relief in Asia. In Kenya, most every year happens some disaster, is especially in South Asia. Last year Philippines, this year aspect Yunnan, China. Almost this area we are working. So I was in Pakistan in 2009. I was working in Pakistan. It's quite a dangerous place that we are military guard. Then come back to Thailand again. Thailand is not a developing country anymore, but still we are working in gapping the slum and migrant and hill tribes. So we are focusing on slum. 1,200 slum in Bangkok. More than 20% population living under poverty, even though Thailand is developed already. So we have an office in Toronto slum, one of the largest slum in Bangkok. So we just renewed the library designed by Chulalongkorn University student from Faculty of Architecture. This is one of the famous actor, announcer, Jarame-san. She's a caster too. She came here to donate the lectures. Always she came to here to slum. Also, Japanese government minister Uchikawa from Japanese embassy also joined the opening ceremony. Jarame-san. And also, Yamaha, many private sector supports Yamaha. This is Mr. Izawa, Minister of Political Affairs. He was sitting here. He always come to encourage us, Japanese diplomat always coming to this land, working in the migrant area, Thai-Myanmar border, and so this kind of situation. Also, we are providing multi-language mobile library, Thai, Burmese, English, Cambodia. So because Cambodia, this Thailand is many migrant children. So we provide scholarship supported by Nippon. 1 year more than 5 million yen support, more than 10 years. Nippon. Also we have a culture exchange in Africa. This this year, September came here, Samantha University, and Chiraronkon and Shirakakon, Japanese students enjoyed Rakugo. Yes. Because we are working with the Rakugo Association in Japan that we call Charity Rakugo. Every month, no, almost every week we organize a charity Rakugo to people to know and the problem of this region. And at the same time, we are preserving Japanese culture and the volunteer participation. So 1990, Cambodia, we organized Asian Children Culture Festival in front of Angkor. This is maybe first and last time when NGO organized such kind of big stage. We organized 12 times, but after Thailand, political situation not stable, we stopped 12 times. So we are always doing school construction by community participation. More than 200 schools is being constructed. So it was as a secretary, library, cooperating with the JICA and the Ministry of Education in Cambodia. Storytelling is library project in Islam. So this is a Uniqlo now supporting this kind of school construction, library, community center. 1 year most budget more than 1 million, 10 million yen annually started this year. Uniqlo is a newcomer. Now since 1992, the similar activity, library setting up the provincial library more than 10 in Laos. But now JICA stopped the funding now, they just now stopped provincial library project, but also we are focusing on publishing the picture book. Mobile library is the same, primary school construction, supported by Japanese ODA, Nuju Guaranteed Assistance. So going to Myanmar, refugee camp, same. There are seven refugee camp on the Thai-Myanmar borders, this kind of situation. We are operating 7 refugee camps and 23 library on the borders. This library funded by used to be UNICEF, Japan government, but now no more. UNICEF, Japanese government too. So still we are continuing library activities. And the picture book publication from folktale, we using that folktale to Burmese language or Myanmar language. Before we came here, only library is English. Children cannot read, so we focus on their own language to publishing this kind of book. Also, we are doing cultures for the children, organizing Children Culture Festival. In refugee camp, more than 10 ethnic groups, not only Karen, so they enjoy. Also, Uniqlo again, Uniqlo the 5,000, recycling project closing the migrant and the refugee camp area. So this is newcomer. Also, World Refugee Day, cooperated with the Japan Professional Football League, J-League, Japanese Embassy in Thailand, Japan Foundation, Japanese media NHK engaged on many media, the UNHCR like to try to join. This is Japanese former J-League player, Mr. Honda, not Mr. Honda Keisuke. This is Honda Shinnosuke. So enjoy. This is pictures. Director of Japan Foundation, Bangkok is a poet chance. I was supposed to show him, but I don't know yet. And Samurai Japan, the Minister of Japanese Embassy, Mr. Izawa, from NHK Chief Bureaus, Asahi Shimbun, Yomiuri Shimbun, many media, we organize a bit to Samurai Japan, but a bit old, chubby. So to Myanmar since 20, actually we this year started. I know you with Ministry of Information, we are the first NGO in Myanmar working with the Ministry of Information. His Excellency, Minister, he said that, oh, you are from Japan. We have a similar culture. You are maybe advantage to West compared to the Western NGO. We are really welcome. We don't expect the money. We expect your experience working in Asia. Please come. So maybe shortest, only 6 months we propose MOU, legislate, maybe shortest. Maybe the similarity of culture, and we are only one NGO working for the library and storytelling maybe. Then now we started, it's the office, still small. But the last 2 months we are working with the Myanmar Writers Association publishing picture book. This contest, first contest picture book. Winner, supporting Oasis School, this library project as well. So this from now, from the experience 30 years, South Asia, to beyond the border, beyond another country, Afghanistan, of course a different culture. So the Islamic country are challenged. This is Afghanistan. So this kind of situation, the school building, more than 50% no building school, classroom, good lack of teacher, so many problems. So Afghanistan project, school construction, library. But it's not easy because the Taliban wants this kind of activity against. So when I start school or library, we're hiding this kind. So this picture publication, beginning 5-10 years, it's very difficult. But without this picture book, in Afghanistan, 30 years never published this kind of picture book. Library before the North Both library. Now we work also central government and the provincial government for the teacher training. This kind of big guy now working is like this storytelling. Before they're using gun, now using tool to book and education, children library. So now Japanese future direction is to supposed to talk more. So now Japanese NGO, what is the stance towards government or private sector? So we should really identify that identity of Japanese NGO. So it is one of the big challenges. And networking beyond the border, because many issues cross border, AEC coming. So even Thailand, many children coming from Myanmar, migrant workers, more than 3 million. So also only we can NGO working like a refugee camp, another agency cannot, like a slum. So we should disseminating the information from the field of NGO. We are always working close to mass media, of course social media as well. So from now, I just said that beyond the border, beyond the nationality, Japan to ASEAN plus 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. No, 1, 2, 3 is not enough. And from Japan to ASEAN to world and the world. Because Asian country, our national staff more experienced than Japanese staff, 20 years. So we combine the multicultural, multinational and become multinational NGO, not Japanese NGO anymore. Even we're sharing the Japanese NGO culture. So Cambodia, Laos, Thailand, Myanmar, Afghanistan, staff working together. Maybe one day we can work for another country. Especially emergency relief is better than Japanese staff from Japan because climate and culture are very similar. So ideally want to for another, for this time.